Hi, and welcome to another episode of David Rides a Trike. I'm David, I'm riding a trike. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, I try to provide a little motivation to people with chronic illnesses and disabilities to get out and find some fun form of exercise. For me, it's riding this recumbent trike. Why? Because doing so can be therapeutic and it can turn out to be a lot of fun. Personally, I fall into both the chronically ill and disabled categories. I was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic when I was a year and a half old, although I'm no longer a diabetic, and I'm going to get into that in just a moment. I've had 3 organ transplants, stage 3 cancer, I'm legally blind, I had an infection that nearly killed me, and I've had more surgeries, procedures, and maladies than I can even count or remember at this point. A few days ago, I received an email from a gentleman who is a trike rider. I think he may be relatively new to the triking world. And he also has a YouTube channel, and recently he did a video about his new trike, and in it he mentioned me and was very complimentary, actually. I appreciate that, so thank you. But he mentioned something that I wanted to clarify, and I realized that I may have been leading you guys astray a little bit. That is, he said that I was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic when I was very young, and that is absolutely true. However, he said that I still take insulin, and I don't. I'm no longer a diabetic. Medical technology, specifically diabetic care and technology, has radically changed for the better over the course of my life. But when I was growing up, doing everything that was available, medically speaking, I still ended up at age 27 with end-stage renal disease, kidney failure. That resulted in a kidney transplant when I was 30 years old. Now, as you may know, when you have an organ transplant, you have to take anti-rejection drugs. Otherwise, your body's immune system will treat the new organ that's been transplanted as an invading substance. It attacks it and will ruin it, essentially. One of the drugs that I had to take was prednisone. It's a very common drug. Most of you have probably heard of it. Some of you have probably even taken it. And typically, it's given in the form of a tapering amount over the course of several days. You start out with a certain amount, take less and less and less until you're done over those few days. But for me, I had to take it for the rest of my life. And prednisone has some pretty powerful side effects. One of them, none of the side effects, of course, are good. None of them make me amazingly handsome or anything like that. One of the common side effects is it increases your blood sugar. Now, for a diabetic, that's a problem because your body can't handle increases in blood sugar. That's what being a diabetic is. To compensate, diabetics typically take a little more insulin. The problem I encountered, however, was not only did the prednisone raise my blood sugar level, but it also decreased it at times. So my blood sugars were constantly skyrocketing, then plummeting all day long. It was up and down and up and down. After about 10 years, it was late in 1996, it was taking a really heavy toll on me. And I called my transplant coordinator, who's a nurse whose job it is to oversee the good health of my transplanted kidney and me to some extent. And I told her that these fluctuating, roller coastering blood sugars were going to kill me. I could just tell. I couldn't go on for too much longer like that. It was just too hard on my body. And she said, well, I believe you would make an excellent candidate for a pancreas transplant. I said, does that mean if it's successful, I will no longer be a diabetic? And she said, yep, if it's successful, you will no longer be a diabetic. Well, there was really nothing to think about. I said, sign me up. That was December of 1996. And in June, actually on June 7th of 1997, I received my pancreas transplant. And you could learn about that up here. It's hard to point with these glitens on. Wait. Up here. I'll also put a link down below. So the transplant was successful. I was no longer a diabetic technically. However, diabetes is the gift that keeps on giving. And certain things, such as my vision, at the time of my surgery, the pancreas transplant, I was still able, even though my vision had already begun, was actually well into being impacted by the diabetes, I could still drive, I could still read a book, read a newspaper, things I can no longer do today. And that's because of something called diabetic retinopathy. It's a disease of the eye caused by diabetes. And even though I was no longer a diabetic, the diabetic retinopathy kept doing its thing and robbing me of more and more vision. Another thing that wasn't affected was diabetic neuropathy, damage to nerves in the feet and hands. But don't get me wrong, I would do this all over again in a heartbeat. I have absolutely no regrets about getting this transplant. I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't. So yeah, I consider myself now a reformed diabetic. It still has a few ties to me, but technically I am no longer a diabetic. And I will make that clear in my future videos when I say that I was diagnosed as a diabetic when I was 1.5 years old. I'll be sure to let viewers know that I'm no longer a diabetic. Changing subjects completely, as you can probably see, a lot of the snow is gone from here. Right now it's about 45 degrees. It's very windy. Sun is trying to come out. But even though a lot of the snow is melted, I'm still locked into my little neighborhood here. I can't get out on any of my routes, certainly not the trail, but hopefully in a few more days, if this weather continues, the snow will melt and allow me to ride the trike out of here. So that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you could, I'd really appreciate it. It would help the channel out. If you gave it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Share this video with friends, and I'd love to hear from you, so please leave comments down below. I try to get back to everybody. That is it, and I'll see you on the next ride. Bye-bye.